Welcome to another video. So, for today, I have something a little special for you guys, which is how do you actually study gameplay animation if you want to be a gameplay animator? This is something that I think a lot of us, gameplay animators, especially young gameplay animators, want to know. Because, after all, if you want to be a film animator, then you go ahead, watch a film, rewind it, and watch it, and then study it the best way you can. And same thing for VFX. But for games, it's a little process that I like to go through that I want to share with you guys that hopefully will actually enlighten you guys on how to actually study gameplay animation a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead to the computer and show you guys how I go about it. Let's do it. Okay, so here we are. This is Somerville. Somerville is a game that I've been enjoying a whole bunch, and I'm just getting started, but it looks absolutely fantastic. The art direction is amazing. Some of the design of the game is really cool. I like how, for example, you get some procedural animations right here. You can see the feet kind of like deforming to the stones, but also you get different animations depending on the state. So if you go like into deep water, you can see here he moves differently, right? So all of this stuff is very interesting for you guys to study as gameplay animators. So I'm gonna play it for a little bit just to kind of like find out how it is to actually walk around here. In this game there's different speeds depending on what's going on. And I also know that I'm gonna die most likely very soon. And I died. And then we start over again. Okay, that should be enough for me to then go back and analyze this action. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that in just a second. Okay, so now that we have recorded our gameplay, now we're gonna jump in, play it back, and find out the things that we like, the things that we don't like, study it, look at it, and just have a feel for what looks good, what doesn't, and what kind of things can we take from it. So here we have the scene that we just captured. Now I'm no longer like feeling afraid that I'm gonna die or controlling the character, or I'm not thinking about anything that I'm doing with the controller, because games are all about feel and emotions. I'm just looking at a movie, I'm just looking at a video file, right? So I am now going to go back and just basically analyze this frame by frame as we go through to find out the things that I like. So in this case, I can clearly see those procedural legs right here when they actually go from stone to stone, how they adapting to those stones and actually feeling really cool. And I can also see the state change going from walking, tippy-toeing on this almost like rope-like sequence right here on the stones, to then changing state to the previous and after, right? So you can see here that the state change, which is basically means that you have one set of animations, then now you have a new set of animations, happens around here. And I can see the transition, and I can see how smooth the transition is. In this case, it's really well done, where he puts his arms down and then goes into deep water almost like he's walking normally, and then he can actually just start to get slowly into deeper water, and his state changes go further and further to actually slow down his pace. And he also has a different stance at around about here when he goes into deeper water, right? So most likely there's a flag, there's a trigger that goes, if you go deeper than this amount, then go into these other animations that are slightly different than shallow water animations. And then maybe you actually have to keep your eyes above water, right? So this is the kind of stuff that you are analyzing, right? So let's just go a little bit further and then see this vault animation that they have for this rock here. So there's a little bit of a blip right there. So this is very common in games. See that when it goes from here to here? This basically means that In a lot of games, you have basically a lot of different elements working with each other and countering each other. So you have basically one set of animations blending into another set of animations, but you also have to take into account the floor, especially if it's actually uneven flooring. Sometimes the animation, because it's raycasting, is called down to find out where the floor is, and the feet are kind of like getting into a position. It looks almost like a pop. It's not that bad if it happens really quickly like this, because you barely can actually perceive it when you play in the game. But when you are animating and you're seeing these things in game all the time and play testing them, sometimes you kind of like fixate on these things as an animator. So it might be a thing, it might be a problem, it might not. This is up to your animation director to decide. But the idea here is that you need to keep it to a minimum to make sure that it actually kind of like looks and feels good, right? In this case, it's fine. If you look at it in real time, you can barely notice, but there's definitely like a little pop due to those things that I mentioned before, right? Now, I really like how the character here, while they are walking forward, sometimes from time to time they look back. See that? Like that head transition. So he could have been looking forward all the time, but he's almost looking over his shoulder to kind of like signify to the player, these things behind are starting to move towards me. So pay attention to these things. So me as the player, I'm like, where is he looking at? So then he looks backwards and you're like, okay, so these things are probably going to start following me at some point. You don't notice these things very much. It's almost like you can feel them in game, but that's kind of the stuff that you actually need for gameplay. Now, the last one that I want to test right here is this last one, when he goes from slow moving to fast moving, to a fast-paced run. I really like how they actually made that transition, right? This transition here that goes from like jogging to then running to then sprinting, or right here, sprinting. It's actually quite nice. You can barely feel that transition. And what's best is that even looking back at this, I can already decipher what kind of things I need to do in the game next. And I can tell that the whole thing about having shallow water, deep water, rocks, and all these other things are basically pointing you from a design standpoint that most likely is faster if you go above the rocks. So most of that, tightrope kind of like animation is slightly faster than going into deep water. Going into deep water is going to slow you down, and therefore the light is going to get you. And this is really good game design overall, which is really cool. Also, I have noticed just now that one of the little alien ball things is actually guiding me to where I need to go, which is nice. But yeah, I won't go into any more details, but that's basically what you need to do when you're actually analyzing gameplay animation. Because when you are playing a game, as much as you will want to analyze it, because if you're anything like me, the first thing that you do when you jump into a game is just jump around, walk around, turn around, punch something, do it a bunch of times just to analyze the movement, analyze the interaction. Because you need to find out how awesome it feels to play, but some things you need to analyze it, basically going frame by frame and analyzing it and all that stuff. And this is even useful when you are in development. So I would use this kind of stuff, for example, when I need to see my things, my animations in game. I would ask QA, can you send me a video of either a bug or the gameplay, and then I will analyze it how somebody else that is not me is actually playing the game. Because what happens is, as an animator, you have a tendency to fixate on certain things, such as like minute animations and overlaps and all that stuff, anticipations and stuff like that, while QA, they are gamers, so they're just looking at a game from a standpoint of like, I want to get from point A to B, and that's about it. So you need to keep those things in mind, and the best thing that you can do is kind of give it to somebody else, get them to play it, record a video, send it back to you, and then you can see how interesting it is to see your animations from a different perspective. So if this was useful to you in any ways, consider subscribing if you haven't so far, and hitting the like button for sure, and also commenting about what do you think about this. Is this something you do? Is this something that is new to you? If it is, then let me know how you're going to go about this and analyzing this animation sequences, because once you know this, the whole world is your oyster, and I'm pretty sure you're probably thinking about certain games that you want to analyze right now. So make sure you capture that feature footage and then analyze them. That's all I had for you guys. Shout out to my Patreons for supporting me every single month. Check out my Patreon if you haven't so far. And until next week, stay well, stay safe. Peace.